I'm recording from now. I'm notoriously bad at recording and being long-winded, both of them. so thank you. So sorry, I, with you guys, you've been, Laura and I were just talking, you've been so amazing. You've all been here. I can see you all so many times on the courses. People switch their camera off and disappear for like 2 hours. So it's really nice. We really appreciate it. So what I need you to understand is when we add load to stretching, it makes our muscles stronger. It makes our muscle tendons happy and really strong. And it's creating more range of flexibility. We've got to do it again and again and again, right? Okay, so it's all of those ways. So I want you, so, you know, if we want to do splits at the end of it, and there's some crazy yoga poses out there, especially arm balances, where you're in splits and things, then we need to bring in that loading of flexibility, hamstring flexibility particularly, into our classes or into our training. So it's progression. And then conversely, with when we train strength, what's the best way, do you think? Let's take chaturanga, right? You already know the answer to it. What's the best, most useful way that we can bring into a classroom that we can train the strength for actual chaturanga?
Knees on the floor.
Knees on the floor. What is Laura? That is one. What is Laura asking you to do? Sorry, hands up because I can't see.
Oh, 10 seconds.
10 seconds. Belinda?
Plank, wasn't it?
So plank will not build the strength for chaturanga. Plank will build the strength for plank and arm balances. So anything with the arms straight. Brilliant. Cynthia?
Slowly lowering.
Slowly lowering. Exactly. So Nicole?
I was going to say pushing your weight forward.
Yeah, definitely leaning forward, but the key is slowly lowering. So if you remember from yesterday, that's called eccentric work, right? It's where so remember with the bicep, I can pull the bicep up concentrically, so then my muscle goes boing, or I can lower the bicep, and that's eccentric, but my muscle is working. We are stronger eccentrically than we are concentrically, and it's more accessible to us. So we can train chaturanga and a push-up, if we want to do a push-up, by slowly lowering down, okay? Lowering right to the floor even, we'll start building up the tricep strength that we actually need for a load of yoga poses, because the big ones anyway, because yoga is very tricep dependent. We push, okay? Push. We don't pull, we push. So pulling is bicep, pushing is tricep. So we can do, when we want to train strength, the same thing that we do with the hamstrings when we're lowering slowly, 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 that is building up massive amounts of strength, right? So let's go to Belinda's plank. How would we train plank progressively? Where would we start from the most basic, and how difficult could we make it? Any ideas? Easy plank. How could you do an easy plank?
Knees.
Knees. Yeah, perfect, right? There you go, knees. Okay, that's right. Then what after knees?
On elbow.
Elbow is actually really hard. Keep on the knees and think about something where you're in that.
A fury plank, like just lifting the knees slightly up.
Yes, lifting the knees slightly up. Okay, so you could be on your knees, then you can lift one knee up and put it down, other knee up, and then both knees. But in that, have you all done that? It's like a little floating kneeling plank. And it's like, you'll feel immediately the load here, because remember, we'd be training shoulders, or also abs, but shoulders. You'll feel, oh, okay, I'm in a kneeling plank. There's a bit of load on my shoulders. The minute you take your knees up, bang, your shoulders go, whoa, there we go. Abs are on, because your body is trying to stop you from falling to the ground. And the minute it does that, when it's fighting gravity, we've added load, okay? So we're training it. And then where would we go with after floating knees?
Straight legs?
Did you do it? I can just see that. Straight legs, yes? So is that what you said, Gudrun? Straight legs, I don't know what you said. Yeah?
No, your arm One arm up
Oh,
with
there
the
you
one knee
perfect.
back.
Yes, sorry, I didn't know what you meant. All right, so you all get that. So we can be on our knees, and then we can lift the knees, and then we can go back down onto our knees, and we can put one arm out, one leg out. Then we can do it with our knees lifted and take an arm out and a leg out, etc. Mika, did you want to say something?
You could also do that plank where you're pulling your knees slightly back, so knees in line with hips, and then go from there instead of just being in a 4-point position.
Exactly. So you can pull yourself back, okay? And it's changing where the load is. You could also lean far forward, and that's going to bring the load much more onto your shoulders. So the point is you've got all of these great things to do. And then what can we do in a straight plank? Then we move to straight plank. What can we do there? Spiker.
Lift a leg or lift an arm.
Lift a leg, lift an arm, okay? So all of these things, lift a leg, lift an arm, because the minute we take away contact with the floor, we make the load heavier, and your muscles have to fight way harder to stop you from smushing on your face, okay? That's the key. The minute we have decreased contact with the floor, the more the load, okay? And we have things like, have any of you done plank where you're on the tops of your toes? Tops of your feet, I always say tops of toes, tops of your feet. Eh? Yes, okay. Wilma, you saying, what does that feel like to you?
It's much harder for me doing it with my feet pointed.
Yes, it's great. If you haven't tried it, try it. It's one of my favorite things in class to bring in. Tops of the feet plank. People love it because you've decreased the contact to the floor. The load has gone right onto your shoulders and your abs, and you are fighting with all your might to stay up there, right, Wilma? And it's fun. People love it. You know, it's like, wow, and they're getting stronger. Okay. So there's all of those things. Plus, also, we've just got a simple thing called time. You know, hold for longer. I mean, how long do you think you hold plank or chaturanga for in a vinyasa class?
Really short. Not very long.
Not very long.
A few seconds.
Few breaths.
Yeah, which is why often when the 200 hours come to us, one of the biggest requests we get is we want to learn how to do arm balances or inversions, handstand, those things, that type of thing, and get more flexible. And then people will say again, I've been doing yoga for years, and we're like, what is that? And people can't hold a plank because we don't train, we don't teach people to be stronger. So if we were thinking about just simple planks, so we're talking strength here, right? So what would plank be a really good training for, a harder pose? Nicole.
Handstand.
Handstand. There you go. Arm balances and handstand, right? So, and it's a brilliant way of doing things. You know, you're out there as a teacher and you decide, we'll talk about handstand in a second, and you decide to teach handstand in your class. Please don't teach it the way Vinyasa yoga teachers teach it. It's useless. All right. So it's the great way of telling whether the people that are in front of you let's not say happy in a handstand, because very few people are happy in a handstand to begin with, but that you have confidence that their arms could hold them would be by holding them in a plank, right? Going, well, these people can knock out a few planks, hold for 30 seconds, 15 seconds, whatever. Depends. The meaner you are, the nicer people like it. It's just a thing. The longer you make them hold, the more fun they have, right? So they actually like it, and you can then go, they've got the strength for handstand. Do you see what I mean? So it's like looking at flexibility and strength requirements in a pose. Now, what we have to also understand is that if we're talking about two things here, we're talking about within a class, one class, 60 minutes, and we're talking about training over time, okay? The two are completely different. In a class, we know this now, that we can warm up, right? We can warm up our muscles for flexibility, okay? We get that viscoelasticity going. So then we're feeling a little bit warmer and a little bit juicier, and the bone, everything's moving a little bit better. So we can really help that, okay? So if we're teaching a flexibility pose, then we can do lots and lots of stuff before the flexibility pose that is going to make somebody's muscles feel like they have more range of movement. But we cannot do the same thing for strength. What would happen in a class if my peak pose, if I wanted to teach people handstand, and I did plank after plank after plank?
Tired.
Exactly. Yeah, you're going to be exhausted, right? It's just, I don't know how many of you have done it, but it's my pet hate when I go into classes and they bring in forearm balance. I don't know how many of you have got to that level, or they offer forearm balance and then they make you do 10 dolphins before the forearm balance. I'm like, what are you doing? That's just crazy. Dolphins are way harder strength-wise than, that's a good question actually. So does everybody know what I'm talking about with dolphin, where you're on your forearms, kind of in a little downward dog shape? Do you all know that pose, okay? And then forearm balance, and I don't even need you to be able to have done it to figure this out. What is harder, the downward dog shape one or the forearm balance in terms of strength? What's harder and why? And you don't have to get it right, just guess. Nicole.
My guess is that you have less load when you are in the forearm balance, and when you're in the downward dog, you have more load, so it's harder.
Exactly. So when you are upside down and you're in this shape, okay, it's not the same, obviously, because you do have to work your shoulders and things more. But when we're stacked, we're energy efficient, okay? It's actually, it's hard, don't get me wrong, forearm balance is hard, but it's not as hard strength-wise as dolphin, because all of the load in dolphin is being forced down at this angle into our shoulders. So it feels like most of us want to face smash in dolphin. So it's a good strength, and it's not my fan because my arms are quite short, but when you're upside down and you straight, it's the same thing as, I don't know if you've seen it, there's half handstand against the wall and full handstand against the wall. Half handstand's way harder, okay? There's more load on your shoulder. The minute you're in a handstand, there's load, of course, but there is not very much. It's much more about fighting for balance. So it just depends. This is also part, and it's definitely in the videos in terms of strength, it's change of angle, okay? It's the same thing. So here's a change of angle. If my downward dog is this shape, or it's a shorter downward dog, where's the load? Tricky question, okay? It's going to be tricky, right? Which shape is going to have more load on my shoulders?
The narrow one.
Okay.
No.
The thing that, no, it's really tricky, and I promise you, this is, I asked this to the 500 I teachers, none of them got it right. Actually, I lied, one person did, but she's like a PhD in something physics-wise or whatever. Right? If I'm in a long downward dog, okay, what happens if I'm, okay, here's my arms and here's my legs, okay? This is, what is this movement at the hip? What's it called?
Flexion.
Flexion. What happens when I do this, a shorter downward dog? What's happening to my hip flexion?
Decreasing. No.
It's decreasing. Yes. Yeah. So it's decreasing. So what happens when my hip flexion decreases? What does this look like to you now? What pose?
Forward fold.
Forward fold. Okay. So the longer your downward dog is, right, the more weight on your shoulders. How much weight is on your shoulders when you're in a forward fold?
None.
On your feet.
No. Okay.
Your
So
feet
all
are flat.
these things did change angles. Okay. So changing angles of poses, changing plank. Somebody said forearm plank. Forearm plank is really hard. It's harder than normal plank. It's too complicated to explain why, but it's fundamentally a change of angle. Normal plank is like this. forearm plank is horizontal. Here, you've got more load. It's just changing load. So I don't need you to get too much of that, but just know that by taking a hand off the floor, by lowering slowly, by doing all of these things that actually make poses fun and interesting, you can actually increase flexibility and strength. But you cannot build strength in one class. So don't kill your people by making them do 20 planks or dolphins before you make them go and do a handstand, all right? You'll learn this in sequencing. This is why we go, you know, what tires. So I want to talk to you about pose analysis now. We're going to talk about this next weekend, so don't get your knickers in a twist yet and start panicking, all right? This is very simple. It's going to be fine. It's okay. You're going to choose 3 poses, and you're going to run them past Laura. You've only got to give them to Laura on the 3rd of August, right? The reason for that is so we can talk about it a little bit more and you can experience more poses. 3 poses, right? Those poses will be, Laura's going to approve them mainly because if she sees in your practice that you might have to work on a particular thing, she might say, she might say, Cynthia, you know, off you go, I need you to work on your downward dog, right? And that might be one of your poses. Otherwise, they can actually be any pose. It can be any pose. I don't expect you to be able to do the pose after you analyze it, right? So if you want to choose something crazy, which some people want to, other people don't, I'm not expecting you to be able to do it. That's not the point of the exercise. The point of the exercise is to break the pose down, okay, into those things. Strength. How much strength do I need and where for the particular pose, all right? How much flexibility do I need and where for the particular pose, right? Then I need you to look at skill. What do I need to do in the particular pose, right? What's going on? Where is going? So we'll go through an example, right? I need you to look at that. And I need you to look at, which we've been talking about now, what will tire in the particular pose. Then I need you to look at modifications. But this is all for you, right? This is for whatever pose you choose and for your body, right? So it's a play around trying to understand the needs of a pose and the needs of you, right, as an individual. So my advice would be choose something you really want to do. If Laura says you don't need to work on anything in particular or pose analysis, choose things that you really want to do and that you're going, ooh, I want to understand why I cannot do this pose or what's going on in the pose, because it's going to make it more interesting for you. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. So you just have to look at that. I want to go through, because it was in the pose analysis thing. We always talk about Firefly. It's a good example. Okay. So in Firefly, what flexibility do I need? And where?
Hamstring.
Hamstrings, Claire. Yes, hamstrings. Okay. What other flexibility?
Wrist.
Wrist flexibility. Yes, wrist flexibility. Okay. Maybe also some inner groin flexibility, but that depends. Okay. But generally hamstring flexibility. So like we said yesterday, if you or your client is going, oh, I really want to do Firefly, what would you look at in terms of their hamstring flexibility? How would you look at it and go, well, they've got it, they don't?
Forward fold.
Forward fold, yes. What forward fold?
Wide-legged.
Forward fold.
Wide-legged. Oh, there's people doing this with their arms, very helpful. Okay. So it's like wide-legged forward fold, right? Okay, so there we go. So we've seen it. So wrist flexibility, you do need wrist flexibility, but unless you've got a problem, you can generally, everybody can do that, okay? If you can't do that with this amount of load, then you're probably not going to be very happy in Firefly. Okay, but if the person can just do that, and some people can't for whatever reason, bones, whatever, then it could be a problem, but we can get around it, okay, with different things. So yes, wrist flexibility. Okay, now what strengths do we need? And where?
Biceps, triceps, shoulders.
Triceps. Yes, Inat. Yeah. So triceps. Okay. So let's keep it even simpler. Unless you, I always say this with pose analysis. Unless you're an anatomy person, don't get too involved in like specific joint movements. Just keep it general. Okay. Like hip flexion, hamstrings, end of story. So we need arm strength, right? Arm and shoulder and wrist strength, right? We've got that, okay? So we need that kind of strength. So for that strength, what pose can we look at to see if we've got that strength?
Plank.
Nicole B?
Plank.
Plank. Yeah, crow. Who said crow? Somebody said crow. Okay. Yes. So so crow, all of those poses. So if you can do a crow, now crow's tricky because I'm not sure how much I think Laura went over with you this morning, but crow is, a lot of arm balances are different shapes. Like we talked about with Warrior 3. Warrior 3 can be level hip Warrior 3, leg up in the air Warrior 3. We can change stuff into a back bend Warrior 3, okay? Arm balances also change depending on arm shape, okay? So in Bakasana, crow, what is often the shape that most people can do? So yes, definitely rounded in the back, but a little bit arm strength, Micah.
Light chaturanga.
Chaturanga arms, right? So then it's a different thing to plank, but we don't actually require that much strength for those arms in there. It's tricky, but we create, I'm sure Laura spoke to you about it this morning, we create a big shelf to put our legs on, all right? The harder crow, what shape is our arms in the harder crow?
Straight.
Straight.
Straight, Cynthia, yes, straight. Really, really hard. Trust me, it took me years to be able to do that with dead straight arms because my little skinny arms just want to like fall over. Got most of me is leg and then tiny little arms, okay? So straight arm crow is incredible. It's way harder than five flat, way harder than five flat in terms of load. But we can look at plank. We could even look at like a little lowering to chaturanga. And that would give us a kind of idea of the shape. So in Titibasana, it depends a lot. And Laura will go through this with you when she teaches you what we call residual poses. You're being taught the poses we need you to know to demo now, and then we cover all the more fancier poses. Okay. So in Titibasana, if you are very flexible, you can have your arms dead straight because your legs are almost over your shoulder. For most people, their arms are a little bit bent, kind of like that shape. So they can create a shelf, okay? It almost looks, you look at it from the front and a lot of you will look like this. Arms are slightly bent so you can have the legs up there, okay? It just kind of happens, right? Like that. So we've looked, so we can see pancake, a wide-legged forward fold, flexibility needs, strength, arm strength. Can they hold a plank, maybe into a little chaturanga, maybe they can lean forward a little bit in a plank, all of those kind of things, right? What other strength might you need in Titibasana?
Quads.
Core muscle.
Quads, right? Okay, sorry, I hear noises and then I see somebody's hand up, so I'm not quite sure where it's coming from. Put your hand up and then I can see where you are. So quads, right? Quads and abs. Pretty much, right? Keep it really, really simple, okay? And Titibasana is a complex one because the more flexible you are, the less you have to use strength. So when you look at you in your template, and we'll talk about it next week, so don't worry about it, it'll say flexibility needs, skill needs, and strength needs, okay? And it'll say rate them, okay? What does this pose need the most, right? So some poses are, so splits. How much strength does splits need?
Not much.
Not much. Not much, right? So splits is a flexibility pose, right? Okay. How much strength does does handstand need? I mean, guess. I know. Okay.
A lot.
A lot.
Okay. So speaking as an average handstander, all right? Bakasana, straight on Bakasana needs way more strength than a handstand, way more. Way more. What does handstand need most? Strength, flexibility, or skills?
Skill.
Skill.
It's a skill pose. So you definitely need strength, but you're looking at what does the pose need the most. Firefly is a really good example because it almost meets things evenly. Flexibility a bit more. It's like, because the more flexy you are, the easier the pose is, right? So honestly, if somebody can lie completely flat and they're small, they can get into Titibasana, no problem. They can hang out there and have a conversation with you. Seriously, I've seen it happen a lot. Like two women talking and chatting away while their legs are up in the air. They just hang out. Okay? Actually, next week I'm doing a whole series on Instagram on Titibasana, flexibility, all of those different things. So you can have a look at it, and then because it's all what we teach on the teacher training, then you'll start to understand a little bit more because there'll be videos going on. But Titibasana needs loads of flexibility, quite a bit of strength, and quite a bit of skill work. Okay, so the skill work in Titibasana, and again, it's on the video. So what's the skill work in arm balances? The skill is the action of the pose, like what you need to kind of know to be able to do the pose. You know, like if we're going to be good yoga teachers and actually teach how to do the pose. All right, Lynn.
Straight leg to get up.
A straight leg to get up, and that's more of a hamstring thing. What do we need in arm balances? And I'm presuming that Laura has told you this morning. Micah.
Drishti and lean forwards and look forwards.
Drishti, there you go. Drishti, lean forward, look forward. So do you all understand that? It's a physics thing, okay? So it's, if you do not lean forward, so think of a seesaw. In America, they call it a teeter-totter, I believe, okay? Does everybody know what a seesaw is? A child's playground seesaw where the one child sits there and the other child sits there, or the one adult sits there and the child sits there. The seesaw does this, right? Okay. In order, if you're starting here, it's all load-based with your feet on the ground. If you don't lean forward, the seesaw, your feet will not come off the ground, okay? The more you're able to lean forward, the more space you have to lean forward, the easier it's going to be to get your feet off the ground. So if you're higher up on blocks, okay, you've got more room to lean forward, okay? So leaning forward, it's levers, literally working like this. Does everybody understand that? In the greatest fear of most people in Crow, and I've been teacher training for a long time, there's almost nobody that I've seen within, I don't know, say 4 weeks that doesn't have the strength for Crow, Chaturanga shaped Crow. It's always about the fact that they will not lean forward enough, pretty much. Okay, and why won't they lean forward enough?
Yeah.
Afraid of hitting their...
Yeah, or everybody had this experience, okay? It's fear, they don't want to smash their face, okay? So in Titibasana, lean forward, look forward, those kind of things. All of those things is absolute key, all right? And the reason is, and I think I said in the videos as well, is that if you don't look where you want to go, you're going to go where you're looking. And if that's directly down, you're not going to lean forward, because we're not going down, we're leaning forward in pretty much all of the arm balances, okay? So what else do we need to do in the arm balance? What is another key, Belinda?
To wriggle your arms kind of
Yes.
through your legs.
Yes, okay, wriggling through, trying to get through. And why do we wriggle through? What are we trying to create? Who said shelf? Somebody said shelf. Belinda, we're trying to create the shelf. If I don't wriggle through, I can't get my thigh on my upper arm. Okay, it's a tricky pose. I cannot get my thigh on my upper arm. And again, I'm going to put all of this on Instagram this week, so it'll be there for you to see. Okay, I videoed it all ages ago, and I was going to put it on today, but I can't be bothered. It takes too long. Okay, so if I don't wriggle through, I haven't got my arm on my shoulder. So if I was doing it here, I'm sitting on that, and if I got my leg up in the air over here, not wriggling through, I would only get to here. I would have this thing, my leg, I'm looking at it, very making my mind go mad, my elbow on my inner knee. This is not a shelf. This means I have to have a lot of strength to hold the pose. But if I wriggle through, so remember I'm doing this all upside down, it's like compass pose. I've wriggled through, okay? Now I've created a shelf, right? There's my shelf, okay? Got myself in my shelf. So if I don't wriggle through, it's a problem. So we're looking at placement. All of the arm balances, all of them are about skill-wise finding your shelf, okay? If you haven't got great flexibility in Titibasana, if your arms are dead straight, you have no shelf. You are going to have to use so much strength to stay up there because your legs will be floating in the air, like literally clinging to your arms because you haven't created a shelf, okay? So shelf creation is key. Then on top of that, we've got different modifications. So how could we modify for Titibasana? Say we don't have enough flexibility, enough leg flexibility. How could we modify the pose? So we can wriggle through, but we can't, like Lynn's saying, straighten our legs. What could we do with our legs then?
Crossing them in front.
You could cross them in front. So there's and I don't know the English name for this pose, Titibasana. You can actually just keep your legs bent and hook your ankles like this, okay? And that kind of squeezes you in and you're like hanging on desperately, okay? Right? So that's a modification for flexibility. Another modification is we have to think about, all of this is in your notes and we'll go over it again and again and again. What will happen if you've got and this often happens with women, the longest legs in the world?
It's hard.
Body. Belinda.
So there's a lot of load out the front.
There's a lot of load out the front, yes. And what happens if you've got short arms like me?
It's hard.
So there's not enough room to lean, okay? So the more height, the longer your arms are, the more height away from the floor, the more you've got to do this, okay? It's just more space. The shorter your arms, if you've got short arms and long legs, Titibasana is hard. You've got long leg load, more work, and there's no room to lean, okay? So then we can put people on blocks. Try different things with blocks, okay? So we can do lots of different things. So Titibasana is just a progression again. If I was to do Titibasana standing, in a standing pose, what would it look like?
The head between your legs.
Your head between your legs. So what pose is that?
Forward fold.
Wide legs.
Wide leg forward fold.
Yes. And if I just made somebody actually extend their arm, instead of putting their hands on the ground, wide leg, forward fold, extend your arms right through your legs. Titibasana, right? It's Titibasana. You know, so there you go. So, but all it is Titibasana with less load. It's the same shape, okay? It's the same shape, just with less load. And then when we get to Titibasana itself, then we try all of these. You can see how tricky the pose is, how many different elements there are of the pose. Then we try and figure them all out. And then we don't expect the person to necessarily whip up into the pose immediately. And we'll fiddle around and figure things out and then hopefully progress them towards the pose and understand the pose a little bit more. Okay. All right, guys, I think you must go now because I can see you all about to crash into a big heap. And I've been going on for an hour and a half and I'm going to crash into a big heap. Okay. Does anybody have any questions before you go? All good? Can't wait till it's night time. Oh yeah, okay. All right. I will see you next weekend. And please, if you have questions and you're confused about things, then send me a message. Okay? All right. All right, guys. Have a lovely evening when you get there and a good week. Bye.
Thanks, Catherine.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.